So Jackie Reeves, let's talk about your work here. And we talked briefly in the studio about how the work's evolved. And why don't you share a little bit with our viewers about this piece that we're with?
Well, first of all, it's very exciting to be in the Cape Cod Museum of Art. This is my first time showing here, so this is a debut for me in this space, and it's a gorgeous space with the nice high ceilings. And bringing the work into this space has been, with the collaboration of being in this team with these other 5 artists, has been really nice to see how my work holds up against their paintings and theirs with mine, and how they speak to each other. So it's been really good to see the work together with theirs, and it allows me to look at my painting in a light that is, how is it in conversation, so to speak, with these other paintings, because they kind of speak to each other, the work. And this piece in particular was kind of very symbolic for me in my transition. Earlier I was speaking about how I had began as more of a figurative artist, and now I've embraced a level of abstraction in my work that is, for me, has been something I've been working on in my practice, is figuring out how the figurative and the abstract go together, and how do they live together in the same space. So this piece is exactly that. I have a figurative, a very carefully painted photographic realism figure in the painting, which I wanted as another, it's like just increasing the language in the painting. So you have all these different ways of making marks and ways of making images. And it's just how they are collaged together. The other part of my work has traditionally been a lot about collage as well, and drawing. So I feel like this piece kind of incorporates all those elements. Even though it's all painted, it has a look of collage, and it sort of feels like there's things that were maybe pasted together, but in fact they were painted together. So yeah, so I'm really happy that this piece was chosen for the show, because I feel like it really represents where I'm at right now in my practice.
And then talking about in conversation with the other artists, your other work that's hanging with Andrew's here, let's talk a little bit about that piece.
Yeah. The show was curated by Bob Bailey, and so he hung the show. I didn't see the show until we came to the reception, so it was really interesting to see how he placed paintings together. And the two that, I don't know if we should look over there, but these 2 paintings were put together. This is Andre van der Wen's painting, and this one is mine. And here's a great example of how the works can speak to each other, how the colors relate, shapes and lines, and even the moves that an artist makes in their painting with masking and holes. And these 2 pieces both have those things going on in them. And we did them completely, like, we don't have studio space together, and we don't see each other's work in progress. So that they showed up together, and I was like, oh my gosh, look, he did the same move in a different way of, you know, like a hole peeking through to another space, and I've done the same thing with this taping off move. So there's an example of how, you know, the paintings are speaking to each other.
I'm with Jamie Wolf now, and Jamie, we were talking about moving off from the studio to the gallery, and here we are in front of one of your pieces here, which is more abstract than some of the other artists in the show, where there's some element of figure or more representation. I would say that this is definitely one of the more abstract of the abstract collection. Is that valid or fair?
Sure. This painting was done in an abstract workshop. It was actually 2 22 by 30-inch paintings that I was working on simultaneously, and then, as luck would have it, when they dried, I looked at them and I said, well, with a little bit of judicious pruning, they will go together. And so that's what happened. Was it was 2 separate paintings that ended up working out well together. I sometimes look at it and see sort of a hokusai style landscape, the Japanese woodblock from the 18th, 19th century periods. Sometimes I see a landscape in it, though when I paint an abstract, I am never thinking of anything representational. The last thing I'd think of is, what does it look like?
Right.
You know, it looks like a painting. So that's where this originated, was purely in a workshop, just spattering and throwing
And it's
paint.
almost an extension. That brush is an extension of your arm there.
Sure, and I think I probably used a 3-inch house painting brush for this, for most of the work. and it just sort of fell off the brush, and I didn't throw it away, I kept it, so, which is a good thing.
It is a good thing. And now your other pieces, the one that you said is this other piece of work we have here.
Well, this piece was actually done for a show a couple of years ago at the Chat House. And I really liked the piece. I'm not sure why I liked it, but it spoke to me. I showed it again at the Catrona Studios show. And then when we knew we were doing a museum exhibit, I decided to take the painting, since I really liked it, and do it over again, much, much larger, just to see what the effect would be, how difficult it would be, how much I would actually try to represent or recreate the original, or how it would evolve into a new statement, which it very definitely did evolve into a new statement. But this was sort of the initial format, context from which to leap into a very different canvas. This is watercolor. The piece that we're talking about is a large acrylic on canvas. So that's how this piece came around. Once I knew we were doing a museum show, I had to make sure that I had one large piece in the show, even though we had a curator who made all the final decisions.
Now, let's talk about the curator and where your work is in concert and in conversation with the other artists. So let's talk again about this piece on the wall here and how it relates to the other artists.
Our curator, Bob Bailey from Provincetown, originally from Washington, D.C., is a very talented man. He came into each one of our studios and took his time and more or less decided what work he thought would look good in the museum. So we delivered it and stayed away from him. And he made all the final decisions. He hung every piece. It was not easy. I came in and interrupted him. I couldn't resist. And he'd worked up a sweat doing this, you know. It looks simple to hang a show, but it's a lot of placing, a lot of guessing, a lot of thinking. So he, with this, I think he did a great job. The color scheme covers a full palette. The very dark essence of Sardinian's work works well with my sort of half grays and half tones and lighter palette. Andre's strong greens are picked up in here. So he did a really nice job of flowing color and form through this wall. As abstract as it is a statement in itself. So that's how I see what Bob was able to accomplish all the way around the room. He did a great job of spacing and placing the work so nothing is over complicated, overhung. It's quite well done.
Well, thank you very much, Jamie.
Sure thing.
I'm joined by Richard Neal, and Richard, we've made it from the studio to the museum. It's part of 6 of 1 here at the Museum of Art. The exhibit's on display through June 22nd, and we're in front of some of your works that are quite different. The brighter colors here and the use of paint, and then we also have some of the work that has other components to it. Let's talk about that.
Sure. Things that I've been really interested in lately revolve around this idea that things are always in motion. And a painting is static, you know, it's there, it's done, it doesn't move. So achieving some kind of movement in your paintings is a challenge for a painter, and it's one that I've been really interested in lately. I've found that collage helps me figure out some of those things so that I can work on the paintings. They're pieces in themselves, of course, but they also help me figure out the paintings in a looser way. And so I'll take shapes and forms cut out from paper and glue them down, work them with charcoals and different things, sometimes paint, but usually charcoal and pastel. And then when I'm working on the paintings, it seems to come a lot more fluidly that way. This painting doesn't have anything else glued into it the way that some of them do or the way that the collages do, but I work with the paint in chunks, in pieces, and different types of applications, spray sometimes, and slathering it on, or working it very carefully in certain places. I like the idea of working the paint in lots of different ways.
And that movement you say, I've heard you say too, you like to, you know, pull apart and put back together.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of the way the whole world is, the way the whole universe is. It's a lot of things moving around, coming together into forms and breaking back apart. I was looking at clouds the other day. The clouds are moving along. You think of them as one giant thing that's moving, and if you watch it, it's constantly just moving a little bit. Parts break off. It's a great visual phenomenon that I'm fascinated by.
Well, and we love to see that and see how you reflect that in your work. Let's talk now about how it's in concert and conversation with the other artists in the room. So seeing your work on the walls with these other artists, and next to you, your piece with The Show Was Curated, and Joe Diggs has a piece next to you. Let's talk a little bit about his work and how you see him, and in concert with it next to your work here.
Yeah, well, Joe approaches painting in some of the similar ways that I do. He's very interested in the way that how you can achieve different types of looks and dealing with the paint in ways that is unusual or unexpected. So he uses rollers and he uses dragging and lots of mark making, and he's very experimental with the works that he does. I noticed in the one next to mine that it's got some one pour on top of things, which he, in some pieces, covered the whole thing with this. In the one next to mine, he only used it in certain sections, so it makes it a much richer experience when you walk up to it and realize that some of it is kind of got this material and others do not. He's really an interesting artist to look at for those kinds of things.
So let's tell our viewers, Richard, about the show. The 6 of 1 is here at the Museum of Art through June 22nd, and that they can get more information on each of the artists and the styles. And again, it's a show of really how maybe it's a different approach to their work, but yet the common thread that we've talked about through the morning here. So thank you so much for your time today, and
Thank you,
for
Melissa.
Jackie Reeves and Jamie Wolf. I'm Melissa Chartrand. Come see the show. It's here. It's quite an exhibit. It's at the Museum of Art in Dennis through June 22nd. Wishing you all an artful day.